Welcome to High Road Athletics. I am on location at Wright State University with Athletic Director Bob Grant. Bob, thanks for being on the podcast.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, so you've been here, I don't want to age you, but you've been here a long time and you've been at Wright State for so many years as a student, as a staffer, and then as the athletic director. What is it about this place that you all have built that, for one, keeps you here and keeps you excited about the job?
Yeah, I think Travis, you're right. You are dating me severely. I saw an article maybe 8 years ago of here ADs who have sort of grown up with their institutions, gotten both their degrees and stayed there. And at that point, it was like less than 5 or 6. So I don't know how many are like me anymore. What I would say is this place has grown up around me while I've grown up around it. So this is a far different job than it was when I volunteered in the athletic department, sweeping floors and counting tickets and delivering pizzas during my undergrad days. And so, the cool thing is coming up through the business, when I was named the AD in 2008, I felt really prepared. My depth and breadth of knowledge of this place, it wasn't like I was coming in from the outside. And that has its positives and negatives to it for sure. But, bottom line is, the job keeps getting better. I think our student athletes and coaches are achieving at a higher level virtually every year, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but the trend line tells us that. And so it's a really enjoyable job. I've got a lot of pride about how our student athletes and coaches are achieving, and that's kept me dialed in, interested, and really enjoying this place.
So since you did your undergrad here, are you a Ohio lifer or where are you from?
Travis, I told you before you turned the podcast on, I am the least connected, most accessible D1 AD in American history, probably. I grew up locally here, raised by a single mother, first person in my family ever to get a college degree. And my dream was to work in Major League Baseball. That fizzled early on. Started volunteering in the athletic department here, made some friends. That helped me land a gig with the Nutter Center, the arena we still play in charge of corporate sales. Moved to athletics a couple of years later in charge of fundraising, and sort of grew from there.
And really never looked back. I saw that in your bio. You had a short stint outside of the university, but it gave me the kind of the great tour of the facility we're in now. And being in Ohio's struggled with higher education, but there's also a lot of D1 schools here. And so thinking about your coaches and having the conversations you do with them, how are they able to recruit in such a busy area whenever there's, I can't even name how many Ohio D1 schools there are in the state. How do they stay competitive in this area?
Yeah, you're right. That's exactly right. Scott Nagy, who is our men's basketball coach, who's tremendous and honestly one of the best hires I've ever made in my existence here, came from South Dakota State, and they would drive 5 hours to find a Division I athlete or competition really beyond a couple schools. Here, you drive out of here and you trip over 10 Division I athletes in multiple sports, and you've got a dozen plus D1 schools all competing for the same person. So I think what our coaches have been able to do very successfully is they've found the niche here. And our niche, quite frankly, is our culture. And it's maybe it's a Tim Tebow quote that we throw on every once in a while: of culture eats strategy for breakfast. And our culture is really good. And I think when student athletes and their families come here and look at us very objectively, and they say, well, look, I'm looking for good baseball. We've got the best baseball program in the state of Ohio the last 10 years. We have 3 guys in the big leagues right now, another half dozen knocking on the door. Okay, yeah, check, good baseball. I want a nursing degree, very good nursing. I want a business degree, very good business. I want an engineering, yes. So once they check those boxes and realize, quite honestly, that, I think we probably provide more for our student athletes in a lot of places. We don't have a ton of sports. We don't have football. We're not dragging that around with us. So yeah, I think our coaches quickly find a niche, but it is hyper competitive in the state of Ohio, no doubt.
Well, Coach Nagy was in here right before we recording, got to meet him, and I was telling you both that as those that have listened to the podcast since the beginning know that my job, traditionally was always the academic compliance person, and so the front door of the basketball facility here has the posted GSR score, and that's always a good thing when I open the front door to see that. So I think that's ingrained in the culture for sure, and also helps with that academic revenue distribution money that
It does.
as that pot continues to grow, that's going to be important for folks. I always nerd out on that type of stuff. Yeah, I kind of want to go to the daily news of the industry. So there's a lot of daily news quotes. We've been talking about some of them before the pod. You say you're the least connected AD. I know you weren't out in Las Vegas either, but does that noise make it harder for you as an AD and your colleagues around the country, not necessarily focus on just what's going on, at Wright State, but when you have people asking you about the direction of the industry and you're trying to keep a pulse on it privately or with discussions, is that news cycle just kind of clouding or making it more difficult to keep up with everything?
It's a great question, Travis. And here's what I would say. I don't want to give you too simple of an answer, but again, our culture here, and I think we are different. And I know we're different when I hire coaches from other programs, when I lose coaches to other programs, when student athletes transfer in and out. And I hear this constantly and have heard it for the better part of a decade. We really concentrate on our mission here and don't let any noise affect us. And that mission that we created 14 years ago, we call it PSA. It means we take care of our student athletes as people first and students second and athletes, and that's a distant third. And my hypothesis when we put that in place 14 years ago was a happy, healthy student athlete would perform better and do well. And I lost coaches over this. We've lost recruits over this. I've fired people over this. But I think the results speak for themselves now 14 years later. Again, doesn't make sense with all the headwinds we've faced, not to mention a pandemic. The last 5 years have been the best 5 years in Wright State Athletics history. And part of that, to answer your question, is we ignore the outside noise. And if Travis Smith comes here as a soccer player for us, a baseball player for us, a basketball player for us, we are going to love you and take care of you and make you better at life first. You're going to get your degree, academically, you're going to be terrific. And we're going to be very good at your sport as well. And so when you have those kind of, I think, pillars in place, all the noise from the outside of who's jumping what conference, what NIL is happening. Now we have to swim in those waters, obviously, and we can't be oblivious to it. But I think you're making a mistake if you let outside noise in any area of your life distract what your mission is and what you want to accomplish.
Well, in that same regard, you say you have to swim in those waters. Thinking of the transformation committee work going on Division I, and when you're having discussions with your meetings with your athletic directors in the Horizon League, representing kind of that subdivision of D1 that doesn't have football with the transformation committee, how do you still keep your voice in the area of change whenever what it means to be a D1 member is changing so much, and to make sure that the non-football D1 institutions are still represented?
Yeah, and it's a great question, and I think it's a scary question in some ways. I would say this: we really rely on the Horizon League as much as any entity to advocate for us, to represent us. But I do think, Travis, quite frankly, and I might be in the minority, this is a losing battle. The Horizon League schools of the year of the world, the mid majors of the world, our voting block is not strong enough to stop these things or cause change. So you've got to be really reactive, and as much as I love to be proactive and everything else, you've got to be ready and nimble to adjust when these things come down the pike, and they're coming, and we can't stop them is the problem.
Well, the recently Wright State made the news last year for an assessment, December of 2021. Went outside the university, hired an assessment company of the athletics program. Kind of just wondering why that was initiated, and then what were some of the things that you found in that, and has there been any changes because of it, or was it just a good calibration of where we're at, where we're going, and what we could improve on?
Yeah, I think the university, like a lot of universities, has faced some serious headwinds financially from an enrollment standpoint. And while Bob Grant, the person who's been here his entire life, can tell you, hey, here's how our student athletes perform, here's our priorities, here's what we do academically, in the community, and athletically, I think it's good for the administration and the board to send somebody from the outside, that is very objective, doesn't necessarily love this place like I do, doesn't know this place like I do, to say, hey, we're going to give you a head-to-toe exam of how things are going. And I think, no surprise to me, that came back very favorable.
Yeah, it seems like the timing. Yeah, we all know, at least people that study higher education and know that the state of Ohio, and really just everywhere in the Midwest, enrollment's down, and it's not necessarily COVID related. There's already an enrollment crisis coming because of birth rates here in the Midwest. But it does seem like, after reading the slide deck that was provided and the summaries when it came out, and flipping through it again, preparing to come here, it seems like it did cover what you might want to know going into the transformation committee, because when we're redefining what it means to be D1, and then is there going to be a monetary expenses that you had to put in to maintain a D1. You all really looked at, I mean, you can tell me what they looked exactly, what was the kind of the task of what they were looking at.
I mean, it was literally soup to nuts, everything. How are you doing? How much money do you spend? How does that, sort of jive with exposure that you get, and what does that exposure look like in an objective way? How are you set up academically? How are you doing externally when it comes to sports information and fundraising and corporate sales? And so, we've long had a mantra that we punch above our weight class. And I think our success indicates that. And there's a whole bunch of major programs around that we've beaten up on in various sports that would attest to that. And so, again, Travis, kind of a point of pride for me to have an outside organization come in and say, you know what, they are punching above their weight class. And really, no entity on this campus gets kids to come here, keeps them here, and graduates them. And that's more important now than ever, as you referenced, to every school in America, right? It's recruiting, it's retention, it's graduating them.
Yeah, and at the summary of the report, the gist of it was, because they were looking at state Division I, reclassified Division II, which Wright State, I think that you said that was a D2 national championship trophy behind us. So it used to be D2, 3 decades ago or whatever, or reclassify it to Division III, which usually is unheard of. And then Hartford, made news about going from D1 to D3. So everything seemed like it was on the table, but the report did say, we recommend, and this is an outside person without influence from the university, of saying, no, they need to stay Division I. And I talked about the academic thing, in 5 years, that academic revenue distribution is going to be $250,000 for some schools or more, depending on how many schools qualify for it. And as long as no more, men's basketball championships get canceled.
Correct.
I think we're at a point where now I can do lighthearted jokes about hoping that never happens again. But yeah, I think it was kind of an interesting study, and being out there to admit that you all were doing a study, because it was nothing that was really hidden. It was all in plain sight. And I know more schools probably internally did their own thing after that.
Yeah. As a state school, every state school in America, we're very transparent. You can open records, any info you want. You can see anything about us. And honestly, and it sounds trite, that's the good news about. And look, Lord knows, Travis, I screw stuff up every day, and I'm never the smartest guy in the room, this room included. But when you do things the right way with the right priorities, it is, it does make me proud when an outside group comes in and says, hey, you know what? They are getting people to come here. They're keeping them, they're graduating, they're winning like crazy. It ended up being, I don't think, from my perspective, ever leaving Division I was a possibility. It wouldn't make sense. Again, we're not a win at all cost place. We don't spend money like crazy. We spend the least amount of any Division I school in the state of Ohio, and are always at the bottom of the league and trending in that direction even more in the Horizon League. Yet again, our academic success, our involvement in the community, and our athletic success is still going in an upward path. So we've got something special here. Our coaches know it, our student athletes know it, and when an outside group comes in and says, you know what, they do. That's it's pretty rewarding.
Well, the last thing before moving on from the whole D1 brand thing is, mid majors. I've worked at what we would call a mid major. There's no definition of a mid major, I guess, but as far as the size of your institution is, you're correct. It also would not make sense to go D2 or D3 where enrollment is like the 40% of the student body. I mean, we're talking 10,000 plus students at Wright State, and so it doesn't fit that mold. But some mid majors that and some schools that are coming in from D2 to Division I right now and are going to try and be that D1 mid major. At what point do you think the brand wears off of, we're a D1 school, we're a D1 school. It's always been the brand, and it seems like it's, as D1 has kind of gone on into these changes, that I just don't know if the brand power is there anymore. And maybe if you are a mid major that is, smaller institution, how do you, if you're an AD at another school, like how do you kind of decide whether it's right? Is it, just the size of our school or anything like that?
Yeah, I think, and again, I'll just give you a simple answer. I think if you're not successful at Division I, then that would give a lot of pause as to, are you in the right spot? During March Madness this past year, I think our men's basketball team garnered over $25 million in positive exposure for the university. I mean, that's like gold for a place like Wright State, right? Maybe it's not for Duke. It's kind of, oh, hey, yeah, we do that all the time. For mid-majors, that's awesome. And we've really, even through baseball, women's basketball, men's soccer. We've got 10 NCAA tournament appearances since 2019. And all that has resulted in all kinds of positive bounce and exposure for the university. If that didn't exist, if we were middle of the pack in all these sports and struggling and not on TV very much and not have much fan interest and not have much donor interest, then I think, Travis, that's the heavy lift of a conversation of what are we doing? Does this make sense?
Yeah, and hopefully I see some rumblings, but I don't think it's been a practitioner-based thing of, what does the future of the men's basketball tournament look like as far as if we get into power, conferences, are they going to try and take all the spots? And so hopefully we never get to that point, because the NCAA basketball tournament has been huge, and that's why there is a D1 brand, is because it does provide you that opportunity for exposure, but also the money that comes with it.
Correct.
So wanted to focus on one other, major storyline that's been at your campus that you all have not, shied away from, but changing sports. So you had to make the tough decision to, drop or cut 3 sports, and then you added 3 new ones. So maybe just what is that process like internally as someone that's been here that long too, and that you care, fundamentally about every sport? What was the, the process and final decision to cut those 3 programs?
Yeah, I'll say this, it was a brutal process, and the darkest days of my time as an AD, which is almost 15 years, going on 15 years now, has been when I've had to cut sports, and no AD wants to do it. And I think it's so difficult when you have a relationship with the student athletes, like I think our department does. Our culture really is centers around emotional touch points, and we could talk about that some other time, of how often we get to see our student athletes, whether it's my house for dinner, whether it's the yeah stuff that we do, whether it's senior luncheons and sophomore ice creams and the community service and all the stuff that our staff does with our student athletes. And so, these are not widgets, these are not numbers, these are awesome young men and women that, their families have entrusted us to help guide them for a 2, 3, 4, 5-year period. And so when the rug is pulled out from under them, it is awful. And so, the last round of cutting softball and men's and women's tennis, this was again during a really tough financial time for Wright State. It was sort of at its I think low point, and I was asked to cut X amount of dollars out of the budget, including sports, and then it really just became a math equation of what will cut the most amount of money out, Travis, and affect the least amount of student athletes. But it's like it makes you sick to your stomach when this happens.
Yeah, and there's really not the with the way that the rotation of student athletes coming in, and there's really you can't just cut it and it not affect anyone more than one class, because you're always going to have that 4 to 5 to 6 year
Correct.
Student athletes. So I can only imagine how difficult that is. And then you're kind of curious that you all obviously dropped under the minimum D1 membership of 14 sports. Was there concern, or did you already feel confident that you would get a temporary waiver to add sports to get back to that 14?
Yeah, I felt very confident, based on conversations and data and history, that we would get the waiver. And then it was our job to work with the university to figure out, what do you add back? What does that look like? That also becomes a bit of a math equation as well.
Those 3 sports you added, want to focus mainly on bowling, because just kind of curious, unfortunately, those listening to this might be in the position where they have to cut or replace sport offerings. We'll see if the 14 number ever changes, for example.
Right.
One of the 3 sports that you brought to varsity level was bowling, and I noticed it was a club sport already. So kind of just curious, is that low hanging fruit, that there's already this culture on the institution, there's already some support, and there's I think it'd been around for 10, 15, 20 years. Is that low hanging fruit and something that was always under consideration to look at a club sport model?
Yeah, I think, and that that's been the model a lot of places when you go.
It's
to
also
add
a growing
sports.
sport, I should say that
For
too.
sure. No, for sure. There are all kinds of schools around the country who their model has been, let's start lacrosse or bowling or whatever it may be as a club sport, see what kind of traction and interest it gets, see how that goes, then transition into a intercollegiate sport. And so, we really had the luxury of a really, really good, really well-run women's bowling program with a coach who's terrific. And so it was, to your point, it was basically plug and play. That was a pretty simple decision.
And I'm guessing there was and me saying makes me remind me, I'm going to ask you about the yeah in a second. As far as you mentioned earlier, you're not, drugged down by football. No consideration, safe to say, to add football whenever that was it, because the costs, I'm guessing, just outweigh what the benefit would be for Wright State.
Yeah, I mean, this is why, without naming names, there are all kinds of schools struggling, dragging around the anvil of football and what that looks like financially, facilities wise, personnel wise, gender equity wise. And so I'll tell a quick story, not to rabbit hole on you, Travis, but I taught a sports marketing class at the university for about 5 years and loved doing it. And it was a big class. And one of the first questions I would get always when they figured out who I was, hey, BG, why don't we have football here? And I would say to them, okay, listen, you're in Dayton, Ohio. It's a gorgeous fall Saturday. You can drive an hour and 15 minutes and see the height of big time college football at Ohio State, right? You can watch a rivalry game on TV. You can go play golf. You can go throw a Frisbee, or wait for it, you can come down and park in a gravel parking lot and watch us play. And I would name a school that, of course, we'd be playing. And they'd be like, I don't want to do that. They want big time football.
Yeah.
They don't want football like football be for us. So there are many reasons to add it. Like there are 6 awesome days a year if you have football, right? And then there are 350 days a year where it's like, oof, okay, financially, gender equity, facilities. So it just doesn't make sense for us. It doesn't. I think we know who we are. Men's basketball is our main exposure sport. It drives this boat, and it's trickle down economics from there.
Yeah, I mean, just the pure cost to operate it for those 6 days. One thing that always stood out to me is it really only makes sense to me, and I've never done the math, but like if you were a D1 that you knew for sure that you could do it in the Pioneer League, where you're not paying the scholarships, but then you still got to pay the staff, you still got to buy the equipment, you still got to create a field. Even if you rent a place to play, you got to have a place to practice. You have to have a locker room, and you're talking about 100 plus people. And then the only other reason is if you're not D1. Right. I mean, when I was at University of Annapolis, football was a big part of the smaller campus culture. They also made every home game an event. That's why they play every home game at 6 p.m. on Saturday, and it's an all-day affair.
Yep.
And so that you can go to those 12 o'clock games. I could go to IU Purdue game, and I could be back at University of Indianapolis, and maybe take a nap between.
Well, a great extension of enrollment management, honestly.
Yeah,
Sure.
and you're looking at D3. That's a big part of how you're able to keep the doors open. But I asked that just to because I read a few places of the rumor mills of like, why shouldn't they add football, and so I know it's a slam dunk, but thanks for still answering.
Never say never, though, and we are undefeated. We still there's shirts around that say that or something.
So. Well, I did undergrad at IUPUI, and so in the bookstore they have those IUPUI football undefeated since 1969 when the school was open. So I got one in my at my house somewhere. I need to maybe you guys should get that in the bookstore. I want to kind of close it on big picture items. So 5-10 years go by, whether you can keep it nationally, if we want to kind of riff on college athletics in general and the direction it's going, or we can keep it to Wright State or D1 non-football. What problems will need to be solved in the next 5-10 years if we don't get ahead of it now? Because that's kind of why we're in this position in college athletics now, is because we waited till the Austin case to really derail the industry.
Yeah, I think, and again, this does not keep me up at night, Travis. Maybe it should. It does not. What keeps me up at night is our student athlete in our program. So that again, I'm wired differently than most ADs. I know that. I would say this. I think there'll be some kind of a market correction, I hope at least, around NIL and no-sit transfer. The collision of those two things really has caused a paradigm shift in the business. And we're a perfect example of that. Our men's basketball program last year, by all accounts, had the best ending to a season, NCAA tournament in our history, and returned virtually everyone. And in that scenario, which we've been hoping for, praying for, working toward for a couple decades, you think, wow, we're set up. We look like a potential at-large team, a potential top 25 team, a team that could maybe win games in the tournament. And then within a week and a half, 2 of your best players are gone. And so, that's a bummer. But again, you can bury your head in the sand and cry about it, or you can just keep moving forward, which we always choose to do. But I do think, the unintended consequences of paying, student athletes exorbitant numbers, right? I mean, I'm not talking about walking around money at all. I'm talking about I'm buying a Ferrari money. What could go wrong giving an 18, 19 or 20-year-old, hundreds of thousands of dollars? And then, the other thing, think about what a locker room looks like, that dynamic. We see all this all the time. How apt am I to block for you if you're getting $1 million and I'm getting zero, right? If I'm the point guard and you're the power forward and you're on a major NIL, how much am I going to give you the rock? How does a coach that? Because now donors have almost become owners in some ways, right? So if I'm coaching you and you're on a giant NIL deal and I think you're jaking it, I decide to bench you. And then the donors in my ear and my ADs, there are all kinds of unintended consequences, not the least of which is some of these, these student athletes, this will be the apex of their earning power at age 18, 19, 20, 21. Usually a typical career path is this way. So I think there will be some correction. I hope there is. But yeah, those are the kind of things I think need to be sorted out in the next couple of years for sure. I don't think the way this offseason in men's basketball, for example, looked is necessarily sustainable. We'll see.
Yeah, that's the biggest concern when I'm, I try to put my, my thinking cap on of the person's school that I'm going to interview and kind of, be in that mindset of challenges. And that's what I was going to bring up is the transfer portal. I mean, you can have a successful, any sport, you could at this level, you could have a successful season in any sport. And if they get noticed, and you want them to get noticed, but if they get noticed too much or you make it to the conference tournament in any sport, there's going to be a coach down the street to say, hey, you can still, play here locally. Or you're just the transfer portal. And I know the windows kind of got shut down recently. And, as someone that did transfer evals, for the last 5 years and handling all that, I understand there's challenges. Also, when you transfer, you lose a lot of credits. Even if you're a brilliant student, the progress towards degree percentage is going to be very different. I mean, you could go from here to Dayton and your degree you might be completely
Correct
off as far as credits. And I don't think there's a lot of education around that because it's so hard because just you want them to have that flexibility and we want to empower the student athletes, but there's also just those issues. So I appreciate that.
Well, and Travis, I don't want to see a nomadic mercenary kind of existence. One of the things I love about our business is, and it's all of us in the business see this, when you bring a championship team back or a reunion brings teams back to honor them, that camaraderie, those friendships that are so long lasting, decades later, right? Teammates are still friends. They've been in each other's weddings. And that is all sports. With the ability now to just go, hey, I'm going to play here as a freshman and here's a sophomore and here's a junior. I think, yeah, you might make some money in the short term, but the long-term benefit of having a home and having teammates that you have been with and struggled with and all those things, that's one of the most important things in our business that I don't want us to lose.
Yeah, and I don't want people to say, oh, you're blowing it out of proportion, but if you have access, like I don't anymore, but to be able to log into the transfer portal and see how many people are in there and how many people are going to be in there whenever the next school year starts. That is a real concern.
It is.
Because you're talking about several thousand student athletes in there, and you can lose your athletic scholarship by going into the portal.
It's like a giant game of musical chairs, and you better hope they have a place to sit when the music stops, right?
And I mean, recruiting is, you're trying to get recruits, and now you're re-recruiting when they're in the transfer portal. So it just seems like a complete, messy situation that is going to be one of the ones that's going to play out over time. And we'll see what graduation rates do, and that might lead to some of the changes. Unfortunately, when you rely on academic metrics, you have to wait a while, as you know. And
Correct.
And so we won't really see this full story for probably the 5 years that I asked you about. Parting advice, I try to pick up one theme in the conversation and ask a final question. The theme here is talking about how you're the least connected AD, most successful AD. We're in a time right now where there's so much news cycle. There's so much trying to get that next job, trying to move up, maybe fear of, I need to get this FBS job because my school might not be D1 or what that power shift looks like. There's also a lot of stress and mental health of administrators. You said this doesn't keep you up at night, but so what would your advice be of just saying to someone, whether they're new to their school or they've been there a while, as far as just taking that stress away by like focusing on what you can control and maybe how you go about your life in that regard, because not everyone's going to be an alum of their institution they're the AD at. But it seems like you might have some great parting advice for how you kind of live your life.
Yeah, I think like I'm a big proponent of balance. We've talked about that sort of with our student athletes. It's not all athletics. It certainly is, the right priorities of community service and academics and making them better as people. Look, that's just as important for athletic department staff members. I mean, I think, these are not jobs where you can turn off your cell phone at night. You're not going to
Yeah.
say, I'm going on vacation, my cell phone's off for a week. That doesn't happen. These are, when we hire people, we talk about these are lifestyles, not jobs. And so that's different than a lot of professions. And so I think, having balance, and I have conversations with coaches with some regularity about you need to have balance in your life. I used to have a trigger that if we interviewed a coach or even an administrator and they said, hey, the most important thing in the world to me is my job, that was a massive red flag for us, right? Because if you put all your eggs in that basket, you inevitably are going to be disappointed or unhappy or stressed out. And so, I encourage our folks, you've been in the business, Travis, to know there are weeks where you work 80 or 90 hours a week. And there are months where you don't have a single day off. And so the flip of that is, I don't mind if there are weeks where you work 20 hours a week, or you have 2 or 3 days off, or you leave early, or you go work out, or go hang out with your spouse, or go play golf, or take a walk. Bob Grant is never clock watching. Our employees need to be happy and healthy first. And that comes, it's almost the old analogy of, put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on the infant on a plane. For us, our staff needs to be healthy and happy and well adjusted to model that behavior for our student athletes.
Well, this is Higher Ed Athletics. I'm on location at Wright State University. The lights went out on the awesome improving, getting a new floor down on the basketball practice facility, but just an impressive facility. Bob Grant, athletic director, just thanks so much for letting me come here and speaking with me on Higher Ed Athletics.
Travis, appreciate it. Thank you.